Coming up on this hour of the Steve Malzberg Show, Stephen Moore will join us, the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal. We'll talk about the latest economic numbers and Obama changing Obamacare again. He'll have a lot to say on that. A college basketball player pushes a fan because he didn't like what he said to him during a basketball game. Is that acceptable? We'll talk to a columnist who says, yeah, under the circumstances, it is. I don't think it is, but we'll have that debate. Also on the panel, David Yonkman, Republican strategist, and Rick Unger of Forbes magazine. Don't go away. All that and much, much more straight ahead on this hour of the Steve Malzberg Show.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Broadcasting live from the Newsmax studios, this is the Steve Malzberg Show. Be a part of the action by calling toll-free 1-877-NEWSMAX. That's 1-877-639-7629. Or email Steve at malzbergshow@newsmax.com. Here is Steve Malzberg.
All right, folks, I want to start with a report from the CBS News, which ran the other day. And this goes to, it was a CBS Evening News on Sunday, actually, and it takes an in-depth look at Seattle's Children's Hospital. And again, this is another example of what Obamacare is doing. And I know I'm repeating myself, and I know I'm a broken record, but the Republicans have to get this word out. Republicans need, just like Obama when he makes his signings or he goes on his campaign tours, which are not campaign tours, but they look like them, and he has all these people standing behind him, right? All these people affected by Obamacare, all these people affected by the minimum wage. Well, what the Republicans need to do on a day-by-day basis going forward between now and November is put forth every day a couple of people with these horror stories related to Obamacare. And I want you to watch one of those horror stories. This is cut 37.
What began as an ear infection for 4-year-old Kate Fink soon became much more serious. Her mother, Sarah.
She couldn't hear really at all in one ear, so that was really scary.
Kate's eardrum had ruptured. Her doctor recommended a specialist at Seattle Children's Hospital.
You have all the what if it's permanent, what if it's, untreatable.
The care was authorized by Sarah's insurer through Washington State's healthcare exchange.
This is an approval letter for the coverage.
Yes.
4 days later, this is a denial.
Exactly.
That letter says the hospital is out of network.
Is this an isolated incident?
This is not an isolated incident.
No. See, here's what's happening to people. You imagine you have a little 4-year-old girl. She's in danger of going deaf. She's at a specialty hospital for children. And then you get this conflicting information, which is not an isolated incident, as according to the doctor. Here's cut 38.
Dr. Sandy Meltzer is with Seattle Children's Hospital.
The exclusion of a major provider like Seattle Children's from a major insurance network in this market is unprecedented.
The hospital is considered in-network on only 2 of the 7 plans from Washington State's health exchange. It's now suing to be included on all of them.
We're seeing denials of care, disruptions in care. We're seeing a great deal of confusion and at times anger and frustration on the part of these families who bought insurance thinking that their children were going to be covered, and they've in fact found that it's a false promise.
But how can this be? Dr. Obama promised us. Just one more quick one before we get to Stephen Moore, who's patiently waiting and hopefully listening. Here's cut 39.
The Affordable Care Act is supposed to provide a wider choice of doctors and lower premiums, but the insurance industry says it is simply too expensive to do both. That's reflected in a new study by an insurance industry consulting firm. It found the number of in-network providers is shrinking nationwide. 70% of insurers on state health exchanges are offering narrower or ultra-narrow hospital networks.
That's why we all pay into the system, is because in that moment when you're in a dire situation, then you hope that the insurance company is going to take care of you.
And what did you find out?
That it kind of backfired.
For now, Seattle Children's Hospital is picking up the tab for Kate and more than 200 other patients facing the same dilemma. But eventually, their parents may have to pay the bill.
All right, so that's the situation. That's the story. Let's welcome in our guest, Stephen Moore, editorial board member and senior economics writer for the Wall Street Journal. Hello, Steve.
Hey, Steve, great to be with you.
Always great to talk to you. Thank you very much. So, I mean, this story, it tugs at your heartstrings, but there's thousands of these kinds of stories. And yet what we all have to realize is so few people have signed up for this Obamacare nonsense, and look at all the problems, and look at all the kids who are left without hospitals, and cancer patients left without oncologists. My goodness, if they ever had a successful website and sign up, we'd be in total chaos.
Yeah, I think havoc is the word, and it's really wreaked havoc on the lives of, we know at least 5 or 6 million people who have lost their health insurance. And by the way, Steve, I have family members, a brother who alerted me to the fact that he now can no longer use his hospital of choice and his doctor of choice, and that's happening all over this country. And it's a rude shock to people who thought this would be, a wonderful thing, and we just simply provide expanded insurance for people who don't have it. Now we're learning that, your own health insurance is very much in jeopardy of, if not being lost, at least being very much cheapened in terms of what doctors you can see and what treatments you can receive.
Yeah, all right. Let's talk about what Obama did yesterday and announcing that the employer mandate for some companies, 50 to 99 employees, whatever, another delay. And the speculation, as you well know, Steve, is that the entire employer mandate might be delayed for 2-3 years. And, of course, the purpose of that, I believe, would be to postpone the effects from being felt right before the 2014 election and, of course, leading into 2016.
Gee, you think so? Yeah, it sounds like it's an overtly political move. And what's interesting is this is supposed to be Barack Obama's signature achievement, right? Obamacare was supposed to be his crowning achievement as president. And if that's so, why is he embarrassed by it? Why is he delaying its implementation? And by the way, this will mean that a lot of people, a lot of companies simply won't provide health insurance. So the number of uninsured will not go down as had been advertised. We could end up with more people uninsured in 10 years than we have today.
Yeah. When is
amazing?
No, you know what? It is amazing. But if you ask me if it was surprising, I'd say no. Nothing surprises me anymore. I mean, I don't know what to expect from him anymore. If he took a law that we had all grown up. Well, here's something. How about this one? Companies who want to fit under this delay and are employing 100, 101, 102, 105 people and want to cut down to 99. It's against the law, apparently, and not only you're not allowed to do it, but there's a report out today that you have to swear under oath before the IRS that you didn't fire those people to get under that number so you wouldn't be affected by Obamacare, and you've got to swear under the risk of penalty of perjury.
Yeah. I guess this is a lesson that nobody should ever hire more than 100 workers, right? Because then you can't downsize your firm once you go over that threshold. I mean, this is highly intrusive, and I think the thing that's so spiriting about all of this is that, it'd be so much easier to cover people without health insurance at a fraction of the cost without mucking up the entire health insurance system. What Obamacare does is it essentially it expands Medicaid to millions more people, but Medicaid is a lousy health insurance system. It's one of the worst in the industrialized world. So it's not a great bargain to go into Medicaid. But, I mean, I think the point that people have to really understand here is the quality of care that you can receive with your health plan is very much a risk right now. And that's something that scares all of us.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. We're talking to Stephen Moore of the Wall Street Journal here on the Steve Malzberg Show. Let's talk a little bit about what we saw with the jobs numbers last week. And
can I mention one other quick thing?
Yeah, sure.
I've just on this healthcare thing. So wait a minute. We now have a mandate on individual workers that they have to get insurance, but there's no mandate on the businesses. How's that fair? I thought that the Democrats are the ones who didn't like business, and they're giving a big, a pass to business, whereas individuals like you and me and the people listening to the show, we have to pay fines if we don't buy health insurance.
Right, and that's something John Boehner alluded to yesterday in his statement.
Right.
And let me
exactly right.
And he is exactly right. There's no rhyme or reason to that. These
are the same people who keep talking about fairness.
Right.
And my point is, how is that fair?
It's absolutely not fair. And I'm glad you brought up Boehner, because where I wanted to go next was to the vote that's coming up later today, according to Tim Camp. I thought it was tomorrow, but they're rushing it because of the snow, reportedly. Tim Camp said Nancy Pelosi is running the floor of the House. He said this is a vote Republicans don't want. He thinks that maybe they'll get 20 votes because Boehner could get 20 votes for anything. And this debt ceiling bill, clean debt ceiling extension, will pass the House with about 20 Republican votes. Are you surprised Boehner's do? Actually, they're voting, I believe, right now, and I'm looking here. Are you surprised?
You know, I think this is a bad outcome because I think a clean debt ceiling bill is just giving the government a credit card extension without any reforms in the way it spends. And what parent would do that for a teenager, right? So I think it's a bad policy, but I will say this, at least they're going to extend this debt ceiling. I mean, the guy who ran up the debt was Barack Obama, and the one who insisted on that clean debt ceiling bill was Barack Obama and Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid. So my feeling is if they're the ones who are insisting upon it, they should vote for it. It's their debt. It's their debt bill. And, you know, I think this is probably the best option out there if the Republicans aren't going to fight, which is to force every Democrat in Congress to vote for raising the debt ceiling, and then we'll see how voters feel about this come November.
Yeah, but apparently it's going to pass. It'll probably pass the Senate. And look, I mean, it's a tough position to be in when you have a president who's willing to be obstructive and break tradition and not negotiate anything, and you know that he's aching and hoping and praying that Republicans let the government get shut down, because then they'll be blamed for it, even though it's him that's doing it. So he's in a win-win position here as far as that goes.
Except I think the American people are getting pretty cynical about this. I mean, I don't see, look, if you care about the national debt, you know, and the trillions and trillions of dollars of debt, and the $16, $17 trillion of debt we have now, then this is reprehensible. I mean, to just basically say, okay, here's another $2 trillion debt, keep doing what you're doing, you know, I find that completely unjustifiable, and I feel like a pox on both their houses. I mean, this isn't a national security crisis when you're incurring this level of debt and you can't stop spending. It's like a crack cocaine addict.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Let me ask you about the numbers that came out last week and where we are going forward. I mean, you know, it just you and I have been talking about this, you know, for 5 years now, and we always say that the number you have to reach to make any significant difference and to try to think about a recovery jobs-wise is 250,000. Let me ask you more importantly about the Fed today. Janet Yellen testified that basically she'll keep the programs of Bernanke in place, and that the quantitative easing QE will continue to curtail, you know, pending unemployment going below 6.5%, and also inflation. But tell me, first of all, what you make of that. And it seems like there's no set rule. Am I wrong as a layman looking in? It seems like her testimony today just reinforces what I've always felt, that they have guidelines, but you can't be sure. There's no hard kick-in number. There's no automatic trigger. They're going to decide, you know, month by month or however they decided based on what they see, and there's no hard rule, right?
This is called making it up as you go.
I was trying to be a little more fancy, you know.
They use all sorts of fancy terms in Washington, QE1, QE2, quantitative easing, but folks, they're just making this up as they go along.
But the market reacted well to it.
Well, because they like you know, this is another institution that's you know, addicted to crack cocaine. You know, Steve, in Washington, we're addicted to two things: easy money and the freewheeling spending. And you know, the question is, what happens when the music stops?
Yeah, well, what happens when the music stops? And you're referring to the quantitative easing stopping.
And the spending too. I mean, you know, at some point there has to be, you have to pay the piper, right? I mean, you can't keep borrowing year after year after year after year forever.
But they are tapering, but obviously not fast enough for your liking, right?
Well, you know, I think that we should start to unwind. I mean, there's not a lot of inflation out there right now, and that's the point that Ben Bernanke and Janet Yellen are making, that, you know, inflation seems pretty tame. But, you know, we've never experienced this before. We've never had this. This is what we call a statistical outlier, this massive increase in money. And it keeps me up at night. I worry how this ends, you know, and you know, it's like being dropped from the 90th floor from a from a building out the window, and somebody saying at the 20th floor, "How's it going so far?" Just fine. Right?
Well, it's been happening for so long. I think we've kind of come to expect it, and certainly we shall see how it ends. We'll see what they do. Hey, listen, Stephen, always great to talk to you, sir, and thank you very much for joining us.
Anytime. Talk to you soon.
Take care. Stephen Moore, editorial board member, Wall Street Journal, where he's also senior economics writer at WSJ. So there you go. Yeah, well, we'll check out. I'm interested to see what Rick Unger of Forbes magazine and David Youngman, a Republican strategist who's worked in the Congress for so many congressional Republicans, what he has to say about what Ms. Yellen had to say today, and we'll let you hear a little bit of it. When we come back and the panel joins us, then at the bottom of the hour, David Swerdlick, columnist and contributing editor at theroot.com, and we're going to talk about Oklahoma State's Marcus Smart, who didn't like what a fan said to him, and he went in the crowd and shoved him. Right here on Newsmax TV.
The Steve